Borowski.
And do you know why your parents selected this name for you?
It was a common name under the German government at that time during the time frame.
Do you have a nickname?
Yes, Manny.
When and where were you born?
I was born in a city called Gumbinnen in East Prussia, which was part of Germany, in August 13, 1931.
Do you know how your family came to live there?
My grandfather came from Poland during an uprising in the 1800s.
Were there other family members in the area?
Not in the near vicinity.
What was the house like?
The house was connected to a store. As far as I recall, there were at least 3 bedrooms, kitchen, living room. It was an extensive house.
Were there any special items in the house that you remember?
The kitchen.
Why?
Because it was used extensively. My mother did a lot of cooking. She fed not just the family, but people that worked there. Great food was produced there.
What is your earliest childhood memory?
Going with my dad to like a fair, semi-weekly, but he was in the horse business, and we would go there because he bought and sold horses. It's like a animal marketplace. The reason I remember it was always a special place to go for me to see him operate the way he knew horses, and also the way he. We always went out to a breakfast place. The Germans had a great thing to do. These all men basically, and they would have one shot of booze, and then they would eat and talk about cattle and horses.
Can you describe the personalities of your family members?
Well, they were unique individuals. My father was a real go-getter. He was very aggressive as far as business is concerned, and he knew what he was doing. He seemed to me like always a hero type person. Just a very likable person to other people. My mother, on the other hand, was a very gentle person, would be very kind, and the hugging type of a person. She would always help all out there, and people around her loved her.
Who was the oldest relative you remember as a child, and what do you remember about them?
My grandmother. My mother's mother. That grandmother was very much like my mother. Another one that baked and cooked tremendously because they ran sort of a bar restaurant, and she supervised a cook how to make things. I always said sneak pies and cookies, and they were always there.
What kind of games did you play growing up?
I really can't remember any games to speak of. And, riding a bike or something like that, but nothing, there was no time for games.
What did you do instead of games?
Well, I helped my father. I helped things in a store, but I was a little kid. What I'm supposed to do, I not always did, but help the people feed the horses or water the horses, or I was surrounded by a lot of animals, horses mainly.
Did you have a favorite toy?
A bike. I loved riding a bike. That's one of the things that was taken away from me.
What was school like for you as a child?
Well, I really never went to school there. I was going to school the first day. Any other children were going in kindergarten. I was sent home, was told not to come back to school because I'm a Jew and Jews are not allowed in school. So as far as spending time in school, I spent about an hour. The first ghetto that we were detained had a class for boys and girls. We had a couple of teachers, and they taught us basic kindergarten, first grade education.
Who were your childhood heroes?
I didn't have a normal upbringing. If I have to say anything, it would be my family.
Did you have any favorite songs?
Kindergarten songs. There are some German kindergarten stuff. I won't sing them right now. So.
Did you have any pets?
Yes. That dog accompanied my dad everywhere. So when we went through the market in a nearby city, his name was Fifi, accompanying my dad everywhere. So the minute he took the keys for the car, this dog would jump on top of the car and wait for my father to come out. He would always go with him, always.
What was your religion growing up?
Well, I definitely was brought up Jewish. I come from a mixed marriage. My mother was Protestant. High holidays would be celebrated with somebody in a nearby city. It would be my father's sister, my aunt, or some friends, but never in the town that we lived in.
What world events had the most impact on you?
Even as a little kid, the days prior to television, and pretty much prior to radio, even so we had a radio, the events that developed in the world, somehow my dad knew about them and my mother knew about them, but maybe not the day it happened. The rise of Adolf Hitler, kids that I knew, non-Jews, start wearing the brown shirts. It's a youth group. They belong to a Nazi party. All of a sudden, kids that I hung around with a little bit, 6 years old, 7 years old, they were singing the songs of the German Reich. I was aware of what's happening.
Do you remember any big event that happened, like Kristallnacht? Or?
To this date, I knew exactly what happened that night. It was a normal night. I woke up with glass shattering in the house and the store, which the store was connected to the house. This nanny that I had covering me with a blanket. All the windows were broken and during the middle of the night.
And did anyone come into your house, or what happened after the glass broke?
Right away what happened, my father was nowhere to be seen because he got arrested by people that he knew. They took my dad away and we don't know what happened then. And we were told that to pack our suitcases, going someplace. We're not able to stay in a house. My mother and my sister Ruthie and myself were in a couple of rooms in our own home. We were taken away after that. They told us to pack suitcases, and I believe it was a truck from our little town into sitting there by 20 miles away into a restricted area called the ghetto. The ghetto, even the first ghetto, there was a room that we were given, but that room had just us, Ruthie and my mother, myself. Everybody ate together built in this particular house.
How were holidays?
Before the Kristallnacht, because of the mixed marriage that I came from, the store always had a Christmas tree. As far as in our own home, I don't remember having a Christmas tree. Hanukkah candles were lit in our own home. Those are the two holidays that stand out.
How is the world today different from when you were a child?
No comparison. When I was a child, they were all bad. So there's no comparison of what later on in life, everything was glorious.
What do you know about your family surname?
Not very much. As far as the family tree is concerned, I never tried to get what the real name came from and how far back. I was never told about it.
Do you know what kind of difficulties your mom had with marrying a Jewish man?
4 brothers. Out of the 4, 2 were really anti-Semitic. One was in the SS and one was some party member, but then the other 2 were more favorable toward my father because they're brother-in-laws, where the others disowned my mother.
How did your parents meet?
Being neighbors across the street. I think they met at the dance. They had a Saturday night dances, a dance hall. That's where they met. I know they met there.
Are there any special heirlooms or photos?
Everything that we had was taken away, pretty much. My uncle Otto, he had pictures, and he gave those pictures after the war to my mother.
What's the name of your spouse?
Sandra J. Gorowski.
And the full name of your sibling and your parents?
My sister's name is Ruth Stern.
And your parents' names?
Max Gorowski, Elise Gorowski.
When and how did you meet your spouse, and what did you do on dates?
I met my wife Sandy on a blind date. My sister worked together at the University of Rochester, New York with Sandy. Ruthie, my sister, was fixed up with her brother to go out on the date, and didn't work out at all. And I guess to pay back, I was fixed up by Sandy.
Was there anything you really want to talk about from your experience during the war in the ghettos?
There was nothing good about anything, okay? The only thing good that nobody was put in a gas chamber or nobody was freestyle execution like it happened many places. But as far as starvation is concerned, food related, number one, and living conditions, and it was a horrible life.
Do you know what happened to any other family relatives during the war?
After we survived, and my father wanted to know about his sister, lived in Germany, and she married a man that he owned a distribution for alcohol. I remember them exactly because we used to go some high holiday. They wound up in the same ghetto as we wound up in our second ghetto. And I remember they were notified, that family, their name was Sabatkar, was notified that to be at the train station at this hour, this date, whatever. And I remember going with them. We took them to this train station, and we all had to wear the Star of David. Didn't have to report there. We just took them. They got onto a regular passenger train, and we said goodbye, and we left. We went back to this ghetto that we could get out of. We found out that much later, the train, it made believe that these people are being relocated as far as the German public is concerned. These trains, cars were taken out of the yard, out of the station, and overnight they took all the people out of that regular passenger train. They wound up in Auschwitz and Birkenau, and they wound up in a concentration camp. My uncle was in one of those camps, I believe in Dachau, and he did not survive. Neither did my cousin, who was identically aged as I was. He was then 6, 7 years old, and then the other one was my aunt. All three of them didn't make it. My father, after we got to this country, he wanted to know what happened to his family on that side, and he put an ad in like New York Times, but it was a German Jewish paper that was published in New York City, and for the people that came from different countries, and he asked people if anybody would know about the name Sabatkar, and somebody answered, and I remember my father was extremely upset because he was told that his sister and my cousin, she had him in his arm. They dig their own graves, and they were both shot in the head, and right there they executed both of them. A guy my age, he was 8 years old, 7 years old, and my aunt. And my uncle was used experimental patient in a hospital where they amputated his leg, even so there was nothing wrong with it. They tried different things with his body, and he eventually died. So none of those three made it.